The air is heavy, thick with the bitter tang of olive oil lamps burning low. Their flames flicker and shiver, throwing long shadows across stone walls carved by centuries of prayer. At first, you hear it faintly, a low rumble like distant thunder rolling in from the desert. Then it grows, hooves pounding the earth, the sharp crack of siege engines tearing wood apart, and then the screams. Not the wild chaos of battle, but something deeper. A breaking, a chorus of voices collapsing into the night. Women calling names into the dark as flames claw upward beyond the Mount of Olives. Dust fills your mouth, scratching your throat, mingling with the metallic taste of blood already spilled. Figures in scale armor surge through a breach in the wall, faces smeared with sweat and fury, swords flashing under torchlight. Doors shatter one after another. 400 voices rise in defiance, then fall silent. And this is only the beginning. What follows will echo through empires, a shadow no king, no god could outrun. Hold on. We're stepping straight into the heart of it. Before we go further, you need to know this. What you're about to hear involves systematic violence against women of faith, captured and destroyed in the name of conquest. These events come from ancient chronicles, etched into stone and bone. They are real, and they cut deep. If the weight feels too heavy, it's okay to step away. I'll understand. But for those who stay, we honor the loss not by lingering on suffering, but by tracing the machinery that made it possible, the empire that crushed them without hesitation. Imagine a world balanced between rival suns, the golden eagle of Byzantium clawing desperately at the fading stars of old Rome. To the east, the fire altars of Persia blaze brighter with every victory, fed by Zoroastrian flames that promise order through domination. This wasn't chaos. This was a machine, oiled with ambition, driven by betrayal, and turning steadily toward Jerusalem in the spring of 614. At the center of it stood Khosrow II, Shahanshah of the Sasanian realm. He ruled from Ctesiphon, a city of soaring marble arches and hanging gardens where the Tigris whispered secrets of power beneath moonlit bridges. Khosrow was no mythic monster. He was a man shaped by survival. His father, Hormizd IV, had ruled with a brutal hand, crushing nobles until revolt became inevitable. When the rebellion came, Khosrow, barely 20, fled west, seeking refuge with the Byzantine Emperor Maurice. He begged for help. Maurice answered, sending legions that shattered the rebel general Bahram Chobin and restored the young prince to his throne. Gratitude bound them like iron chains, until 602. That year, a low-ranking centurion named Phocas murdered Maurice, displaying his corpse for the ravens. The betrayal detonated something inside Khosrow. He swore vengeance, not just for power, but for the father figure who had saved his life. This wasn't blind rage. The chronicles suggest something colder, accounting. And with that, Khosrow unleashed his armies. They poured across Armenia, Mesopotamia, and Syria like hunting hounds off the leash. Cities fell in sequence. Damascus in 611, Antioch soon after. By 613, his general Sharbaraz, hawk-faced, ruthless, his name meaning boar of the realm, had carved a blood-soaked path straight into the Levant. And there, at the center of faith and stone, stood Jerusalem. To the Christians within its walls, Jerusalem was the navel of the world, the birthplace of their God, a city guarded by walls as thick as Scripture itself. To Khosrow, it was a ledger entry. Break it, and Byzantium would bleed. But the board was more complex than walls and armies. Jewish communities, long barred from the city since 70 CE by Byzantine decree, saw an opening. Persian rule promised access, maybe even restoration. Whispers spread through Babylonian exile networks. Aid the Shah. Rebuild the temple. When Shahryar's advanced, as many as 20,000 Jewish rebels slipped into the ranks, daggers hidden beneath prayer shawls. The siege began on April 15, 614. Catapults hurled stones as large as wagons against the walls. For 21 days, defenders held firm, arrows screaming through the air like angry spirits. Then a tower collapsed. Dust poured down the stone like tears. The machine engaged. Picture Jerusalem's streets as they once were. Narrow veins pulsing with pilgrims and merchants. Incense drifting from the church of the Holy Sepulchre. Patriarch Zechariah stood among them, his white beard framing eyes heavy with the burden of a scattered flock. Born in Gaza to a family of shepherds turned scribes, Zechariah had risen through the church with words sharper than steel, mending schisms and steadying kings. He was no warrior, but his voice had carried nations. At dawn, he climbed the ramparts one last time, tracing the sign of the cross over the city, praying the walls would hold like faith itself. Below him, Shahryar directed the assault from a black stallion draped in silk. His soldiers wore lamellar armor that flashed like dragonhide in the sun. Jewish allies surged beside them, cheers colliding with the clash of bronze. The defenders fought street by street, but numbers broke them. Smoke rose from the suburbs. Inside the Church of the Resurrection, Zechariah ordered the true cross, the relic believed to have borne Christ, hidden beneath the altar in a silver reliquary. It wasn't enough. Turncoats guided Persian scouts straight to the crypt. At noon, Shahryar rode forward under a banner of parley. His face was scarred by 20 campaigns, his voice rough through an interpreter. "Yield the city and the relic," he demanded. "Khosrow offers mercy." Zechariah looked past him, to monks clutching beads like lifelines, to women herding children toward the pool of Mamillah, its waters a false sanctuary. "The cross stays," he said calmly. "It is not yours to claim." Shahryar laughed, a short, bitter sound, and gave the signal. By dusk, the inner walls collapsed. Persians and their allies flooded the holy sites, torches hissing against sacred oils. Zechariah barricaded himself inside the sepulchre, but hands tore him out, chaining his wrists with irons meant for galley slaves. The true cross was dragged through blood-slick streets, its silver casing dented by careless hands. Shahryar claimed it as a trophy. Then came Khosrow's command. Couriers arrived breathless, their horses lathered with sweat. The orders were clear: not just victory, erasure, leave no root. The machine turned again. Night fell, but the screams cut through it. At the pool of Mamillah, thousands huddled, priests, merchants, families whose only crime was prayer. Soldiers waded in, swords rising and falling. The water ran red. A deacon named Thomas whispered numbers as he watched, later scratching them into a ledger. 4,500 at the pool alone, or 24,000, depending on whose grief you believe. Some say 60,000 died in total, others half that. Historians argue, bones do not. In 1989, excavators uncovered a cave near the site. Skulls and femurs piled together, dated by coins fused into the crush. This was not chaos. It was systemized. Captains rewarded for quotas, reports tallied in Ctesiphon like grain counts. Zechariah, beaten and bound, was brought before Shahryar. The general offered wine laced with mockery. "Your God fled," he said. Zachariah spat blood. He weeps with us. Orders were orders. Zachariah was shackled into a column of 35,000 captives and marched east. But the deepest fracture had not yet come. Lift your gaze now to the Mount of Olives, where stone paths wound through whispering groves. There, in a limestone convent, 400 nuns lived lives measured in bells and bread, silence and song, and the machine was already climbing the hill. They were known as the brides of heaven, 400 women wrapped in black veils, their days shaped by prayer, labor, and the slow rhythm of bells echoing through stone corridors. The convent clung to the Mount of Olives like a final breath, carved from pale limestone that caught the moonlight. No full names survive. The chronicles blur them into a single litany of devotion. But one figure steps forward through the dust of history. Sister Maria. She had been a widow from Bethlehem, her husband taken by fever years before. Grief had led her here, into silence and service. Her hands, once rough from tending herb gardens for the poor, now folded in prayer before dawn. At 35, she led the Vespers, her voice steady enough to carry the sisters through years of Byzantine taxes, raids, and uncertainty. She was calm when the glow of Jerusalem turned from gold to ember that night. Calm when the distant rumble reached the hill. First came the sound, hooves scraping stone, men shouting in unfamiliar accents. Then the sight, Persian riders circling the convent like wolves testing a fence, horses flecked with foam from the charge. Sharbaraz's lieutenants, drunk on victory and wine, rode forward and demanded entry. "Surrender," one bellowed, his voice thick with Mesopotamian dust. "Live as servants." Maria climbed the low wall, her veil snapping in the night wind. "We serve one master," she called back. Her words carried like incense over the courtyard. Behind her, the sisters gathered, clutching psalters as if they were shields. Their voices rose together. Kyrie Ellison. The officer laughed and raised his hand. Arrows struck the wooden gate, one slicing Maria's arm, burning hot as it drew blood. Dawn crept in gray and cold. Rams wrapped in wet hides slammed against the gate until it splintered. Soldiers poured inside, faces twisted by anticipation, armor clattering like loose bones. The nuns were herded into the courtyard, divided with methodical gestures. 50 to one captain, 30 to another. Numbers spoken like livestock counts. Maria fought until a blow dropped her to the stones. Veils were torn away, the air filled with sobs and the dull scrape of boots. What followed was not frenzy, it was deliberate. Bodies pressed against cold walls, cries smothered by hands trained in conquest. Some sisters whispered prayers through it, faces set with the stillness of painted icons, their faith turning inward like a blade. Others broke, voices splintering into silence. Maria, dragged beneath a colonnade, locked eyes with a young novice. Anna, barely 18, an orphan from the Jordan Valley, whose laughter had once filled the refectory. "Sing," Maria whispered.